Hi there. Pilates principles can be used to improve and make other exercises much more efficient and stop other problems developing. And that's really prevalent when it comes to shoulder rehabilitation. So we can use simple kind of Pilates movements. In this case, it would be based around a Pilates arm circle. And for that, I'm going to use a Swiss ball and just need to be in front of a wall. So for this one, we want to take the ball up, essentially so that the middle of the ball is chest height. And the kind of requisite start position here is being able to get your hands up to lean against the ball. If you're unable to get your hands up to shoulder height, you can do it a little bit lower, but really this is kind of at the stage where your shoulders will be able to get up to that parallel alignment. Now, we want to put a little bit of load through our shoulders, so we simply do that by taking our feet away from the wall, so we're leaning into the ball slightly. Now this is where your Pilates key elements, first of all, come into the mix, because most people I would give this to as an exercise immediately start losing control of their core, their lumbar spine, their Pilates center. So you think about zipping up through the transversus abdominis, through that anterior core, keeping your neutral pelvic position, and making sure that you're not drifting into anterior pelvic tilt. So that kind of notional tucking of the tailbone, pulling the belt line up at the front, and making sure you are centered even though you're leaning off vertical. The next thing, which is again a very key element in Pilates, is what's going on with the head and shoulders. So a lot of people here will immediately stoop into a chin poke position. So that idea of keeping neutral through your center, but also retracting the head, keeping the chin tucked in, getting that lovely alignment from the crown of your head down to your tailbone. That is the first port of call with this exercise. Once we've got that established, then we're getting into the idea of dissociation of movement, which for me is probably one of the fundamental aspects of Pilates, being able to dissociate movement properly. We're going to try and keep that lovely neutral position from head to toe while we start moving the ball in small circles. So keeping your core engaged, just draw a small circle with the ball, and as you're performing this, you're going to be asking your shoulders to do this gentle loading, but simultaneously asking the core to stay stable. And this has got multiple advantages. One, you are putting proprioceptive load and therefore strengthening elements through the shoulder. But because so many people who have shoulder pathologies have a almost like a kind of correlating core weakness as well, you're really getting to the fundamental aspects of what's underpinning the problems that you're trying to fix. So from here, that should be your first port of call. Drawing circles, or you could just go north, south, east, west, whatever you want to do. But make sure as you do that, you're not allowing your rib cage to drop in towards the ball. Make sure you haven't suddenly lost your neutral and you've kind of gone into this horrible arched position. You are essentially planking here, and then you can do whatever movement you like. In terms of progressions, they're pretty straightforward really, and they shouldn't really come as any surprise. First up, I'd keep it two-handed. Even if you're just rehabbing one shoulder, keep it two-handed. And you can add in a greater amount of lean. That essentially puts more weight through the shoulders. Or a really nice one is to come up onto a mini heel raise, and then you can perform these same exercises again, and that reduces your base of support and therefore increases the challenge. If you want to fire up the posterior chain as well, the external hip rotators, place a small ball between the heels and squeeze that ball as you're performing your heel raise, and that really kills two birds with one stone. You can get a kind of double your money for your exercise. Where we're aiming for though with this one is to bring in those sorts of progressions, but moving on to one-handed. So you take the shoulder you're trying to rehab and go right back to the minimal lean position. Think about your Pilates center again, and then perform this with the dissociated arm movements, whatever they may be. Increase the lean, you can bring one heel up, you can bring both heels up. And for all these variations, once you've got used to doing those techniques, eyes closed is a really nice final addition. So as with all Pilates exercises, and I would argue exercise in general, and as I would always say with shoulder exercises, make sure that there's no apprehension in your shoulder at any point. So even though Pilates can't lay claim to to creating this particular exercise, you use your Pilates principles to really make sure that you're getting the most out of it, to make sure that you are progressing effectively, and that you're not jeopardizing any other problems like pinching your low back just because you haven't thought about that while you're doing your shoulder movement itself. So this is a really great version to practice. And final point would be, as is always the case with the ball, it's there to introduce instability, it's there to highlight weakness. If you're skidding and the ball is moving quickly or imperfectly when you're doing your movements, that's the final thing to really think about. Quality of movement, control where you want the ball to go, move the ball where you want it to, not where it wants to go to.